Britain's royal family welcoming President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump with pomp and pageantry for the first full day of an historic second state visit. While President Trump met with the royal family 25 miles away in London, demonstrators gathered for an anti-Trump protest. We have CNN White House reporter Elena Treen and CNN royal correspondent Max Foster in Windsor following all of these events. Elena, first to you, that pomp and pageantry is right up President Trump's alley. The royal family certainly must know that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the strategy, of course, Brianna, is also not lost on the White House, but not to say it's not working. This is the type of thing that the president kind of relishes. I'd actually note that, a little bit ago, we saw what they call the beating retreat, essentially a ceremony where people were in military uniforms marching. You saw the president sitting under a dais next to the first lady, as well as the king and queen. But then they had the red arrows do a flyover, and you saw the red, white, and blue kind of streaming in the plane's wake. That is exactly the type of thing that the president has a great appreciation for. I know in my conversations with some of the people who are here on the ground inside the castle were telling me that the president very much enjoy that. And of course, I think one of the big things as well, one of the moments that a lot of people are looking forward to is that state banquet this evening. It'll be, of course, inside the 900-year-old castle. You're going to see the president, the first lady, but also a number of the president's top officials and aides, people like the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, Steve Witkoff, his special envoy, many others as well, all joining him, including as well some allies and friends of the president. So that is going to be a big moment. It's also a moment, I'm told, that Melania Trump has been planning for months now. Her outfits around to make sure, that this is a spectacle. And that's really what today is about. A lot of pageantry, a lot of ceremony. And of course, the reason for a lot of this is that the UK wants to ingratiate Trump with them, particularly ahead of tomorrow, when we're going to see really the politics come into play. We know that there are going to be some trade deals discussed. I am sure tariffs, of course, are going to be discussed. Technology deals on the agenda for when the president meets with the prime minister at the prime minister's country estate in Chequers. And a lot of this is to really solidify and strengthen that relationship between these two countries at a time when Trump has shown little interest in keeping with the post-World War II order. And so that's what a lot of this is about. One striking moment, though, that I do want to bring up, Brianna and Boris, is that we have seen the president and King Charles have a lot of moments, one-on-one private conversations, very kind of different from what we saw back from his state visit in 2019. Of course, those tend to be private. We likely won't get any information on what they actually discuss, but we know they have very different politics, and King Charles especially wanting more aid for Ukraine to fight Russia's aggression. Climate change, another big priorities of his. So he could potentially have brought those up or bring those up later today. All of that we are watching very keenly.
And Max, you have covered many of these visits. Talk to us about this one and how it compares in scale and significance.
It was supersize on every level. Wherever they could make it bigger, they made it bigger. The Guard of Honor, usually one company, three companies, so 3 times as many soldiers as they could fit into that little square there. They just rammed as many as they could in to give, I think, Charles things to point to for the president, say this has never been done before in the history of this 1,000-year-old castle. The beating retreat, which Elena was talking about there, has never been done for a state visit. It's normally reserved for the King's birthday up in London. So there's so much to point to say this is an unprecedented second state visit, but also in terms of scale, this is the biggest event we could possibly lay on for you. And we're about to see the state banquet. I think it's going to be extraordinary on a different level, really, in many ways. And woven into it will be as many elements, not just of American life woven into it, in terms of the drinks and the food and the music, but also specifically Donald Trump. I think there'll be tributes to him, his mother, to Melania, everywhere, so they can keep pointing things out, saying this is the most special visit you could possibly have got.
And talk to us, Max, about the protests that I mentioned.
Well, the protests are there. They're quite obvious in London, but the protests can't get anywhere near Donald Trump. He's been flown into protected safe zones in a helicopter. I think the most extraordinary moment really early in the day was the procession. So you have a carriage procession with the cavalry out front. Normally it's going through crowds of people, and that's part of the moment. But this was in Windsor Great Park with no public allowed anywhere near it. Yes, there's a big security concern here, but other presidents have been in front of the public in the carriages before. I think a lot of this was on the British side, actually, trying to protect the president from any sort of embarrassment, to make sure he felt really, really special, and that the relationship with America was kept intact in long term. And despite the fact that so many members of the public have a complete distaste, frankly, for the US president in this country, as we saw in the demos last night.
Max and Elena, it is quite the spectacle to behold, and we appreciate you reporting on it for us.